is that right to assume, with what you said, that you were not sure from the beginning that you will end up in pharma?
Oh, yeah, 100% right.
Welcome to Eminence Unfiltered Part 10, and today we have Dr. Gopal Vaidyanathan with us. He is currently working with Natco Pharma as Senior VP leading Analytical R&D and Development Quality Assurance. Prior to joining Natco Research Center, he worked with Waters India as Vice President Technical Operations. He was responsible for establishing Global Applications Development Laboratory at Bangalore for chromatography and mass spectrometry for pharma, biopharma, clinical and food safety. He has worked with Ranbaxy Research Labs, Landra Therapeutic Research, Dr. Reddy's Research Foundation, and Advenus Therapeutic in various capacities. So let's welcome Dr. Gopal Vaidyanathan together here. How are you doing today, Dr. Gopal?
I'm fine, thank you. Guneet, thanks for inviting me over to this program. I enjoyed whatever went on in the auditorium in terms of teaching us about nitrosamines, other things. But what really made my day was the last part, okay? I think they are absolutely gifted.
Yes.
They played their part very well. And especially the beat as well as the flute was something which really tugs at the heart.
Yes. I couldn't even close the statement at that time because I just told Mansi, can you just go on the stage and take over, because I might go on the stage and cry. It makes you realize that how much we crib about things that we don't have, and what are they making with the things they already have. They don't have eyes, but that doesn't stop them from achieving what they want to do in their life, isn't it? So it's really beautiful.
Yes, I could definitely see that you were slightly moved, okay? But what's very important is also what you said there, in the sense many of us look at all the things which we don't have rather than being grateful for what's been given to us.
Absolutely.
And I think there are many ways in which you could have entertained people, but choosing this one, I think in some ways also is a reflection of the organizational philosophy and perhaps a little of your own personality also.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I
you
think
very much,
it's
Dr.
commendable.
Gopal. And to let you know about the Typical Advantage, that's an organization that is a very big platform for inclusive platform. So they're not only creating opportunities for the singers who want to show, not only the opportunities for the painters who want to sell their paintings, but also they are getting placements in the companies and organizations, and somebody who want to probably work in a barista or a coffee shop, or somebody who want to get a job in a proper role and they have done studies for that. People with disability for legs or means they cannot walk. So they are creating opportunities for them, which is like commendable. It's a beautiful organization. So
No, I definitely agree with you. Lemon Tree Hotel, I've been to that in both Bangalore as well as in Chennai and Hyderabad. And I find that they have a lot of differently abled people who are working there. And I find that once they are given appropriate training, most of them do their job very well. And what I also hear talking to some of them was the attrition rate for these people is much lower than what you typically see for that industry.
the value for life reflects, isn't it?
Yes, I think it does come up somewhere.
Dr. Gopal, we know you as a professional. We know about your background with the contribution towards the pharma and technology. You have served with a variety of the organizations, not only with pharma. So we want to know more about you, who you are behind the facade and the professionalism. So can you share more about your life?
See, I'm basically a person who's very close to the family because I feel that family is most important. And all my life, I've also been focused on doing the best I can at my workplace. So that's been there. In terms of my family, I have my wife who's environmental scientist, but more into environmental training now. I have a daughter who's in her 8th semester of law school, at MS Ramaya in Bangalore. She's somebody who's very keen on law right from the time she was in 8th standard. So we said, if you know what you want to be, then we support you 100%.
Absolutely.
So that's there. I have a younger brother who's in Bombay and 2 brother-in-laws. So my world is very small. These 5 people are the most important ones for me. I have a few good friends. In terms of personal interests, I would say I enjoy music a lot. It's not any one type. I mean, ghazals are good. So is jazz. Some of the old Hindi films songs also. Jagjit Singh is a favorite of mine. And same way, if I see Pankaj Udas, is also somebody I enjoyed listening to. So there's multiple facets. Again, during my years of graduate school in Buffalo, New York, I found that I developed a taste for jazz, okay, and also some amount in terms of Western classical. So that's an interest. I enjoy reading a lot, okay. Right from my childhood, I find that I've been enjoying reading books, so that's very important. Traveled quite a bit, so I find that travel always gives you a slightly different perspective and makes you see things which you don't see when you're staying stationary in the same place.
Opens up new experiences.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And most importantly, what I find these days is, it's become very important for me to also discover something about myself in terms of the inner journey. Okay. So today what I feel is, unless and until I make myself happy from within, I cannot be the best person I can become. And what I also sense is if I am not happy within, I probably cannot make my family that happy. And probably this effort is showing up more clearly in the last few years, both at the personal front as well as the professional front. Rather than being only obsessed with work, I try to look at life in a more balanced way. Work and delivery is not everything. There are lots of other things besides this, which is also equally, if not more important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is such a pure energy, which is so contagious, and you shared it with me. I would 100% agree to this. Doing this podcast has helped me understanding one thing, that every successful leader, they believe in the idea of a balanced life, and they want to create that kind of balance, which is like where their work is not hampered, but at the same time, they're giving proper time to their family as well. And can you tell us more about that? Means, how do you manage your work and your professional life and your family life in a balanced way?
Guneet, I mean, I am probably as guilty as anybody else in the sense at the early stages of my, getting into the Indian pharma industry and working, I found that I would probably sometimes be out for very long hours. In the sense, the year we got married, I wasn't home on Diwali evening. I was in the lab because there was something absolutely essential. And when I came back home very late in the night, I thought that my wife would be not too happy. But I found that she was ready with my dinner.
Oh.
Okay. And she was sleeping in the drawing room. Fine. And she didn't have any questions for me. And later when I talked to her about being away that night, she said, see, you had to do it. You had to do it. Okay. And I have to support you. So if anything, what it made me realize is I have somebody who is going to support me without creating any difficulty for me. If also truly, like I very often tell most of my friends very jovially, she's the better half in every which way in our relationship. You follow?
Good partnership is so important,
I think it is.
right?
It makes life much easier.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's the part which I think is important. Next, coming down to the fact that as you progress in your career, you slowly realize that you have to spend time with family to some extent. You are committed to your work. So, and see, initially you're probably more working for yourself and your improvement and learning. And later the stage comes in when you probably start thinking more in terms of your organization, your team, and other kinds of things. That's the way
it is going down. Absolutely. You also shared about that your daughter is learning law, and And it's so good to know that means, your daughter, she's not doing something better. There is a possibility that she choose to do it, but she's still doing law and you are very happy and receptive about it. That is very good parenting. As a proud father, would you like to share more about it?
See, Gudit, again, here I would say something which is very important in the sense, see, all of us go about starting our careers. Very few of us are fortunate enough to say, I want to do this and end up doing this. Okay, so in my case, if I look back, I wanted to do engineering, okay? But that was towards the 10th, 11th, 12th stage.
I'm still crying though.
Okay.
It's good that you did not take it.
Yeah. So, but I didn't end up in an engineering college. I ended up doing something with respect to chemistry. And during those years, I was slightly fortunate to meet somebody who was doing his PhD in UDCT, that is ICT now in Bombay. And I felt that, okay, I'd missed the bus once, but probably I should study well and get into ICT for a program. And I managed, in the sense, getting into ICT was good. And my specialization then was, whether you believe it or not, textile technology. Okay? So I was a textile technologist, and somewhere towards my final year, I realized that I could not spend my life dyeing clothes or, finishing fabrics and being happy with it. Okay? So I realized I have to do something a little bit more.
Okay.
So again, as we say sometimes, the path shows up by itself. So two of my very close friends who were hostelites told me one evening that they were going to start preparing for GRE, okay, and apply to universities abroad for studying further. So I thought over it during a long bus ride between Matunga, Bombay and Ghatkopar, okay, and I said, if these guys can go for it, I think maybe I should talk to my parents and see if I can do the same. So I went, I spoke to them. My parents were very supportive. So I started also preparing for a GRE and TOEFL. And, things went positively. I ended up going to US for my master's and PhD. And I didn't do anything to do with textiles, but chemical physics. So which is very different from what we see, most people taking up. And very often some of my friends who were of Indian background from IIT Delhi or other places would ask me, based on the kind of research you're doing, what kind of a job would you get? Because if I don't get too much into the details but describe for you what I was doing, we were doing something in terms of trying to understand the transition from atomic or molecular level to how condensed phase behaves. That means people understand very well how a liquid behaves or a solid behaves. But if you take one atom or one molecule of that, it may not behave in the same way. So if I start putting 10 or 20 atoms together, at what point would, number of, let's say, iron atoms or iron with oxygen start behaving similar to what you see in steel? You follow? And those were the early days when superconductivity was also very big. So we got to the point where a lot of interesting things were learned. But most importantly, what I learned from my PhD advisor was he gave us absolute freedom to do what we wanted. So my parents never objected for me transitioning from textiles to something else. Okay, my PhD advisor was very supportive. So what I have seen over the life is, if you give a person a chance to do what they think they will enjoy, see, whether they will be the right decision for life or not is a different story. But at that point, if they feel that this is the right decision for them, then I think it is important for a parent or any supportive person to give them all the support they need.
Yes.
And I do feel, see, I made many mistakes with respect to whatever I did. But what I have also realized is whatever I learned of electrical or mechanical engineering or engineering drawing during my UDCT time actually helped me during my PhD in building instruments or troubleshooting instruments or understanding many things. So what I realized is knowledge is really never wasted. And you can specialize in one area and make a career for yourself in something else.
Something else as well.
So,
wow.
So this is where I felt that if she wants it, let her go do it. If at the end of 5 years she says, Dad, I want to do something more, we said, we are fine with it. You follow? But she has to live her life on her terms, and she has to enjoy what she does.
Oh my God, this is such a wonderful advice. And I think that every parents have to think like this. And this way, you will always be certain when you finally achieve it, you'll know that you did it with your own effort and nobody was pushing you as well. So thank you very much for sharing this. And Dr. Gopal, is that right to assume with what you said that you were not sure from the beginning that you will end up in pharma?
Oh yeah, 100% right. See, I when I returned back from US again, it's like this. After my PhD, towards the end of my PhD, I was very certain that I wanted to do something with respect to biomedical research.
Okay.
And that's where I went about applying to a lot of people who were doing cutting edge work on mass spectrometry, but more towards biological sciences. So the person with whom I was fortunate to do my postdoc, he's officially credited with using mass spectrometry as a tool for sequencing oligonucleotides. Oligos are nothing but single strand of our DNA. You follow? So, and that was 92, 93. So it's named after him in terms of calling it the McLucky mechanism. So I feel in some ways what I learned there, my thought was to go do a second postdoc in terms of proteomics and then probably apply into some medical school there.
Okay.
But there were certain things which happened at home here with my aged parents, and I felt it is perhaps better for me to come back. So I came back, and I was lucky in the sense I got a job with a pharmaceutical company in Bombay initially. That was Hext in Mulund, Bombay. Now Hext is merged with so many companies, it doesn't have a name. Okay. But we realized that Hext was going to close down after 25 years. They were going to give a golden handshake and move people out.
Okay.
So I applied to Ranbaxy and was fortunate to get into Ranbaxy. So I would say my real affinity with the pharma industry started after I started working with Ranbaxy, because they procured what I would call as the first LCMS. Many people tell me into the Indian generic companies, because I had heard that there was one in Hext in Mulund, Bombay, where I was working, and there was one in Procter & Gamble, Bombay, but not too many were around. And what I saw in Ranbaxy was desire to, get things done. And it helped me to be a part of an organization which is very, very firmly resolved in terms of aiming for higher things. And it really reset the Indian generic space. Dr. Reddy's, Ranbaxy, Cipla, I think were three big players at that time. So I was very fortunate and also I got a lot of support from my managers there. So a lot of new technologies which came in. It's not just LCMS, but when powder XRD for solid state came in, when capillary electrophoresis came in, when so many new techniques came in, I was very fortunate to be told by my manager to take responsibility for those, learn those, train people on those, and get it into the system. So there was a lot of learning which took place. So that kind of cemented my, affinity for the pharma industry. Yes. And over a period of time, you realize that it is not just developing methods or analyzing, but understanding the quality and the regulatory space. So as I started appreciating the quality and the regulatory aspects of pharma industry, I think it became even more interesting for me.
Okay. All right. That's really great. About your hobbies, because in the start when you were introducing me to your life, you told me that you love books and you love traveling as well. Let's touch both the points one by one. Is there any travel experience that you would like to share with us?
See, there are quite a few travel experiences which I've enjoyed. I mean, as a PhD student, one summer, I think it was probably 1990. There were four of us who decided that we wanted to go around the country. And being students, we were on a shoestring budget. We rented a car. It was a Toyota Camry hatchback. And we decided that we would go around the country. So from Buffalo, New York, we drove to Detroit. From Detroit to all the way across the West Coast.
There's different fun about the road trip, isn't it?
Yes. And then we came down. We saw Mount Rushmore on that trip. We went down and then Yellowstone, Grand Canyon. We walked up and down Grand Canyon on the same day.
We did.
Yes. and finally New Mexico, and then back to Buffalo. So it was like 2 weeks and about 13,000 miles.
It is still in my bucket list.
So when you talk of bucket list, there are plenty of travel on the bucket list. But what I think is becoming very important for all of us is to realize that we should take some time off every year and probably tick these boxes off.
Absolutely, absolutely. It sets your perspective very differently. You meet new people, see different culture, experience different food, coming to the part of the culture and food. So when you travel in all those places, do you prefer eating local, or means how are you with the food and the culture of that particular area?
See, Gunita, I enjoy good food. So when I was in Bombay, all the street food that you can get in terms of things, I enjoyed them. And after going to US, I found that I pretty much adapted to a diet which most people would enjoy. You follow? So that was fun. And after returning back to India, we stayed in Delhi. So we enjoyed all the good food that one gets in Delhi, including the butter chicken and whatever else. Then when we were in Ahmedabad, we enjoyed the unlimited thalis that you have. Okay, so that's not a part. And again, when we lived in Hyderabad or Bangalore, I ate those, whatever is available. And when we travel globally, I mean, we did spend some time traveling across Southeast Asia. Okay. And I enjoyed each one of them, tasting the local food there. And also when I go into Europe, I find that whatever is the local food that is available, I would like to try that out. I mean, when I was a part of a previous organization before joining NATCO, I used to travel to US as well as UK almost every quarter. Okay. So during my time out, I would insist that I would not go to an Indian restaurant. Okay. So I would try something local or something which is a global cuisine. So
I totally agree. Wherever we travel, that somehow the culture and the food of that particular area becomes the part of you, isn't it? And then you have better stories to come back and tell. My sister has this habit that means, she cannot really eat out much, but she has one fixed thing that if I cannot try the local food, I'm going to pick up the McDonald's of every country. Because when she told me this, then I realized that she's true. That whatever is the local food and local culture, it is there in the McDonald's, because they are always adapting. Like even the North Indian menu and the menu which is in Mumbai is different, because it's as per the taste from Mumbai and as per the taste of Delhi. So it changes country to country. So I've started doing it, but the fun of the local food of the countries is still McDonald's cannot really, it cannot really accomplish the mission of tasting the local food.
you're right. I mean, though they have tried to indigenize the food,
Yes.
to suit the local palate, I don't still think they can really figure out what is the absolutely authentic local version. Yeah.
So since you travel a lot, and you like books as well, so are you also one of the travel kira of books like me, who is in the flight, instead of watching the telly, looking at the screen, look at the books and read?
See, I will put it two ways to you. If I was on domestic trips, that is, in the previous job, I used to travel about 100 nights a year. Okay, so that's a lot of traveling. And mostly what would happen is every flight I got into, I would probably go through my laptop for, whatever presentations I'm expected to make or customers I'm supposed to meet. But after I was sure that was done, I would definitely flip open a book and start reading. So there have been times when just before boarding a flight, I bought something and I started reading and got hooked to it and just kept reading it right through. So that's possible. But on international flights, very often what I find is that's the time for us to rest and relax, since they're long flights. So many times what I do is grab my sleep first, and after got enough rest, then I would probably either open up my laptop and work or catch a movie if there was something that caught my attention.
Okay.
That's the way it was.
All right. That's great. And what about in terms of books, what kind of books do you like?
See, I think it has changed over a period of time. In the sense, initially I would probably read a lot of fiction, but somewhere I changed into reading books which are more in terms of business strategies and other kinds of things. Then slowly it evolved to the point where I started going into autobiographies of people. over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been reading a lot in terms of, I would say, how to make oneself better, okay, both physically as well as from within. And, I had a minor or semi-major health issue in 2019. Post that, I found that I started reading a lot in terms of how meditation-based stress reduction can help. Okay, so I started going through that. And because COVID came in, so traveling to any of these places and doing it was not possible. So at that point, I started reading a book by John Kabat-Zinn. It's essentially called The Full Catastrophe Living. It's essentially an 8-week course at Massachusetts General, which they offer for people who have gone through a challenging time in terms of their rehab. So I found that after going through the whole thing and after listening to a lot of his videos, I realized that there's perhaps a lot more in terms of the inner searching for comfort, which helps people overcome challenging events rather than just taking medications. You follow? So I do feel that that has changed me in a different way. And more recently, what I find is, India is going through definitely some kind of a turmoil. You follow? I mean, different aspects of it are coming out. And most of us, though we were exposed to the history at school level, I am not certain that is the true history of India. You follow? So I have started dabbling a little bit into understanding what the real history of India has been. So there again, it's been very enlightening to realize that things like what happened to the Kashmiris was something which all of us never realized. And recently when I visited my home state and visited Trichy, and I went into the temple, I talked to the guide there and realized that that temple had been invaded or vandalized many, many times over the last few thousand years. You follow? So when you understand all of this, it started me on a journey where I feel I want to read about the real Indian history, where it's not what the British did to us or what the Mughals did to us, but go back a little bit in terms of time to understand what really transpired.
The reality more than the information which is fed to you. Yes.
And interestingly, a few years ago, when we had visited Angkor Wat, I had seen those temples there, and they're incredible. I mean, and the stamp of the Indian temple architecture as well as practices are very much there. And again, if you go into Bali, you see that there's a lot of things which portray the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. You follow? So those are also things which are there. And then you notice that there is 1,000 lingas. You follow? The entire river where you find thousands of Shivalingas which are engraved in those. You follow? So today what I do see is sometimes, though we say if we travel globally, we understand many things, I come to the point where I feel like asking myself if I've really understood the reality of what things are about my country. You follow? So there is some amount of interest which goes in there. And see, our home is full of books because my wife, she likes a lot of books which pertain to not just environmental, but also with respect to nature. So we have books in that angle. I also have a lot of books which go into, the scientific aspect of things that's more related to my work. I also like technology, so I read about that. So what I find, Guneet, is, see, it's like if you read the abstract of a book and you feel that it is time well spent. So I do it. And of late, what I've noticed is I'm not reading one book at a time. Okay, I have a couple of books, and depending on my mood, I pick up some and read maybe 5-10 pages.
This is so important. My father, may his soul rest in peace, he used to tell me that if you don't want to become an addict and don't want to zone out from your work, start at least 3 books together. So then you do it like an episode, like 1 episode from this book, 2 episodes from this. So it kind of keeps your things brain streamlined, and you are focusing on other work also in hand, and you're still reading your books as well and updating your knowledge. Yes, I know. I can relate to what you're saying.
And the other thing I find is, as you read very diverse subjects, there is a mental link which you start building. You start interconnecting things much better. And sometimes what I find is, it's good as well as it's bad. In the sense, many times when I have a discussion with somebody, I start pulling out data or information from various things, and sometimes previously, many of us feel when we don't know much that we know everything. And as we really start delving into any subject, we realize that perhaps we are beginning to understand something. And when we read a lot about one subject or a lot of things, we probably come to a realization that we know only what is probably a speck. You follow? That's it. And there's a whole lot more for us to learn, understand, and probably share.
Yes, I agree with you. And the journey of books is always amazing. And the way you're reading books, I guess, means, this probably is one of the things that everyone should adapt. So if you're new to reading books, or you are maybe like 5 or 6 year old person who have read books from the last 5 or 6 years, opening up several books together gives you perspective, and it kind of never will let you zone out from the work as well. Maybe we can adapt, all of us can adapt this kind of habit as well. Tell me something. Apart from the reason that means, you had health issues, you're better now, right? Means everything.
I'm much better.
Right,
Sure.
okay. So apart from this reason, is it right to assume that your wife is another reason that you got so close to reading, and it's self-introspection and the meditational part of in getting connected to the nature as well?
Gunit, what I would say is, I have always been reading books. Okay. See, the way I see it is, when I still remember, I studied in St. Lawrence, Kolkata for some time. And we had a lot of priests who were our teachers from different nationalities. Okay. There was a Father Fosho from Japan. And he was our librarian.
Correct.
And he had a small Tibetan dog. And I used to love dogs. So I used to go up and spend time in his room during my summer vacation for two reasons. One, I got to play with the dog. And second, he was the school librarian.
Okay.
So all the new books which were coming into the library, I could read them before. You follow? So I probably finished all my Enid Blytons and, Hardy Boys and other kinds of things during those days. So I've been addicted to that. And the other thing which I would probably put through to you is there was a phase between 8th and 10th standard, the summer vacations, where there was a library in Bombay, to be precise, King Circle area, where he said he would charge a flat rate for the month and you could take one book out a day. So I used to religiously go every 24 hours and pick up a new one. You follow? That means I would have to sit and read 3-4 hours and finish it and give it back to him. So that's the way it was. So it has always been a part of me. The only thing is, during my BSc years or my BSc Tech years, when you get very seriously into academia, you follow? That was the part when I think I moved away from reading with such intensity. Okay, so that's been the thing. About music, I would put it this way to you. Unless and until some music was playing, I found it difficult to read. Okay, so if I was, there are at least 2 or 3 things I can say. If I'm, doing organic chemistry, I would find some nice songs playing. And if I was definitely doing mathematics, for sure, there was something which was fast paced, which was going on, and I would be doing math. Okay, so I enjoyed it. Yeah. So that's there. So what I sense is, that's been there. And traveling, I would put it to you, in US, every 4th of July, I would have a family reunion with 2 of my cousins. So, and we made it a point to meet at different parts of the country. So traveling was very much there. And other thing is, when you go to a new country and you know the back of your mind that someday you will return back to India. So you want to see as much as possible of that country. So I made maximum use of my, 9-10 years there to see as much of the US as I could.
Okay.
So it's been there. But what is very important is, my wife, I'm very fortunate in the sense she also loves traveling. She also loves reading. And her father comes from a very strong academic background. I mean, he is a linguist, and he was a linguist. I mean, he's not there anymore. And he was vice chancellor of CIFL, Central Institute for English and Foreign Languages in Hyderabad. Okay. So I found that there was a lot of learning which took place even discussing things with him. I mean, in the sense, a scientist like me has no a chance of understanding phonetics or linguistics. So sitting with her father, I learned a lot of those.
It's like sitting with the ocean of wisdom.
Absolutely.
All right. And how many languages he already knew? If I may ask, means how many languages he already knew?
He knew.
Yes.
I think he was speaking 2 languages, that is Hindi and English. But since his PhD was from Edinburgh in English, so he spoke proper English in a different way. And he's written a dictionary, that is Hindi-English dictionary, which sells very well. And even today we get a decent amount of royalty, which we try to use for socially justifiable purposes. But I find whenever I went into his home and saw his library, I always felt that there is a lot for many of us to.
You and your wife must be so proud of being his daughter and son-in-law, isn't it?
I definitely learned a lot from him. I think there's a lot for her to feel proud about her father. He was a very good human being, taught a lot of things to many people.
Okay. All right. And Dr. Gopal, about your journey to Pharma, you already told me, that means, how you started your education and how you came to Pharma. Your designation, your leadership role, this is not handed down to you. You have earned it in time. Can you tell us your journey to leadership role as well?
See, Guri, this is where I feel that a couple of important things to understand. I think the leadership ability is something which, see, different schools of thought are there. Some people say some are born leaders, some say people learn leadership. I think perhaps it's a mixture of both. Okay, why I put this is because in my school days, when we played cricket around where we lived, I was probably captaining the team, okay, taking a lot of responsibility. And when we played in school, for the school, I found that though I was not the captain, I was somebody who was discussing with the captain as well as other senior people.
Right.
And what I did realize is many times if your parents or your surrounding is able to give you the ability to make independent decisions, you follow? That starts building things. Yes. And in my case, my parents are much older. Though they got married when they were very young, I was born to them very late and my brother was slightly later. So what I did realize is as they aged, we had to take greater responsibility and make sure that things were set correctly. You follow? So next thing which is very essential is, see, during my PhD time, I found that my last year, my advisor went on a sabbatical. And he pretty much gave the purchase orders to me, saying that he has already signed it once, but you have to sign it a second time for it to go through. And I was given the responsibility of handling the team. Okay, so I started having some experience in terms of guiding other people doing things. And what I found was in Ranbaxy, again, I was very fortunate to have a manager who gave me increasing responsibility and different people. And he was again somebody who told me once or twice saying that, see, you are able to learn many things, which I am not, but I will always support you managerially, whereas you give me what you have technically. You follow? So that was the good part. The next thing which I felt which became very important was the next job which I had was into a startup. So where, how do you say? We had to recruit people, we had to train people, we had to put systems and go forward. And in those days, the bioequivalence data from India was not being accepted. And Lambda Therapeutic was a small startup. So there again, having to get boys in who are absolutely fresh from college and standing next to them in the bench and working with them at the same time when customers came in to a CRO, being the technical face in terms of business development. So it gives you a feel for both of these. And I must also thank my managers there or the proprietors for, taking me on, to business conferences in CPHI, London, other places, traveling with them, seeing what it involved in terms of bringing business into an organization.
Yeah.
You follow? So that was good learning. And from there, when I moved into Dr. Reddy's in discovery development, I would say like a whole new world opened up to me. Okay, I mean, Dr. Reddy's, I feel, was very good as an organization, and I was also very fortunate to have a very supportive manager. Okay, so he introduced me to new areas. So there again, I could expand myself technically. And what I found was it's always a two-way street. See, you have to learn from your seniors. That means have somebody who Sometimes they are very good mentors. Sometimes I think you have to coach your mentor also to be better. Okay. So some other people may phrase it as you may have to manage the manager. You follow? I feel it is much better to make them a good mentor, give them nudges in that direction if it is required, or if there's something very good in them, learn from them. And what I also realized very early is the needs of your people who work with you. The juniors were there. It's no point just being a manager. You have to be a teacher to them. You follow first. And if you can teach them the things technically, and if you can give them the confidence that come what may, I am with you. You follow? And if things work out well, the credit is yours. And if things don't go well, I'll take the blame. You follow? If that's the approach which you take, I think they'll do their very best. You follow? So that I thought was important. So today what I find is, there's various leadership types which are possible. One is the situational leadership. One is something where you discuss in terms of technical leadership. And third is in terms of financial leadership. So what I find is, having had different roles and having during my time in Advinus, which was again a startup, or in Waters, I had a mixture of technical and business responsibilities. So what you eventually see is, we have to make the business viable, but at the same time, we cannot lose sight of the science. You follow? Because end of the day, the business is coming because of the science. You follow? So I felt that if I can constantly expand my scientific understanding, okay? I mean, today you heard some of them say that we are analytical chemists, we can separate 20 peaks, but we cannot tell you the structure. So it is not possible to be 100% perfect in everything. So you have to be good in some areas, 4 or 5 areas. Rest of them, you at least have to have a reasonable enough knowledge to have an intelligent conversation.
Yes.
And as long as you are able to recognize and reward each person's contribution, you follow, without taking anything away from them, I think you build a successful team. And like I always say, every person who has a senior role managing a lot of people has to create a good team, but more importantly has also got to trust that team to deliver. You follow? Micromanaging people every single day is not possible, and very often what I find is people who do that are probably creating a bonsai effect. You follow? In the sense, they are not allowing the people to grow. So they will stay stunted.
They will always be dependent on you.
That's not the correct way. You have to let them free. And again, it takes me back to Sting's work. You follow? A song which he has. If you love somebody, set them free, right? So it's not only that in personal relationship. I think it is also similar thing is true in professional life, in the sense you have to give people, the chance to do what they will do well and evolve. So these are, I think, small things which I have felt about. And when you read certain business books written by Westerners, I feel that they perhaps do not apply 100% to our Indian context. Because what I find is many of the people who have worked with me are people who came from rural India. Some of them cannot speak English properly. You follow? So it became imperative for me in some organizations to work with the management to create an English-speaking environment. You follow?
Yeah.
So those were important things. So I think we have to kind of work with what we are given and do the best in always trying to improve them. And it's only when you improve them that you improve yourself. You follow? And somewhere what I find is, as the tide rises, all boats rise. So if you raise the level of the environment you are in, I think automatically your seniority in the organization will also evolve. So this has been my personal philosophy.
Right. So if I have to summarize, step one, that means the first and far most important thing is that the parents and the kind of culture a kid is given to voice out their opinion is very important. And then after that, when you start your professional careers, then it's very important for you to have, rather than the right company, choose the right bosses or choose the right manager who are going to be the reason behind your growth as well. Are they allowing you to see the things the way you want to see? They are helping you grow by, nurturing your knowledge in the right direction. At the same time, you're using the teach back technique to teach that to your reportees as well, rather than being a boss to them, to be a leader for them as well and practice leadership at that time, and eventually keep yourself updated, and then you grow, in your designation accordingly. Am I right in summarizing
I think
this?
you have summarized it very well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I have one very important question for you, for our aspiring leaders from the pharma industry. So all the aspiring leaders who are just stepped into the leadership roles, or they are probably stepping into the leadership roles in the coming time. So they all want to know from the accomplished leaders that if they have any advice for them. So if you can share a piece of advice to our aspiring future leaders.
I think the first and foremost thing that I would say is respect all the people who work for you. Okay? Because what I feel is most important is once people realize that you're treating them well as a human being, you follow. And other thing which is very important, I found, is try to know all your people by name. You follow? Because very often what I find is if I go into the labs, I try to talk to people using their names. I mean, it may take me 5 or 10 times before I recall everything.
Yes, to personalize.
I find that it is good. You bounce into people in the elevator, you bounce into them in the corridor, use their name. So this is a way to establish some amount of rapport with them. Second thing is try to create some kind of a personal developmental plan for each individual. You follow? That means he or she knows that this is the trajectory for them in the organization. It's not cast in stone, but at least it's a template to indicate what is going to happen. Next, what I think is perhaps very essential is to try and match the organizational goals with your team's goals. You follow? So that you see that there is synergy. So if all of these are there, and then you meet the broad guidelines in terms of meeting the P&L as well as meeting timelines, quality, regulatory, so all of this can fall into place very easily. But what I do think is each manager must ask one question of himself or herself. What value addition are they creating for their team members? Because the organization pays them the salary, that gives them the increments, everything. So what is it that the manager is bringing to the table for his team? That I think is also very important for each manager to ask. And today what I feel is happening very often is we are missing this kind of coaching. You follow? So if we go forward with this coaching very strongly, I think we will be able to build a strong team and build a pipeline of leaders for the years to come.
Treat your people well. They are not the numbers on the spreadsheet. They are people. So knowing them by name is very important. And second, train them so well that they can work anywhere, but treat them so well that they stay here.
I think you have summarized it beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Gopal. And before we let you go, one very important question that we have is for our future pharma professionals. Because this podcast, it's not only viewed and heard by pharma professionals, but we have a lot of viewers from pharma academics, from pharma universities and colleges as well, who are our future of pharma. So any piece of advice that you would like to share for their career?
So I would say that pharma is going to be a very exciting place. Okay. And second thing, what I feel is India has been a generic company. In the sense, we are repurposing or making it cost effective. That's good. But I think going forward, we have to become innovators. It's very important we do that. So for us to become innovators, I think what is important is there has to be a fundamental change in the education system itself for pharma. But more importantly, what I find is all senior pharma leadership have to recognize that they have to help train our people get better. So the technical training aspect which I see has to become stronger and stronger. See, because this is R&D driven, it is not purely manufacturing. Though manufacturing is very important, it is R&D driven still. And if you want this to happen, you cannot have knee-jerk reactions. You follow? So it has to be a philosophy within the organization which says that we bring in people and we train them well and we let them evolve over a period of time so that the industry does well as a whole. People will move from one company to the other, but overall, if the level rises, I think all the Indian pharma companies will benefit. So somewhere I think there has to be a consortium of all the senior pharma companies to say that we create institutes or we have more collaborations with academic institutions to provide better quality education and research for these people. And the other thing which I also think is going to be important is many of our students who go abroad don't necessarily know what is the best way to come back. Okay, now with social media, other things, it has become easier. But I still think in each organization, there must be some clarity in terms of bringing those people in. And it's not just a question of onboarding them, but also making sure that there is some amount of hand-holding and counseling for them during the initial years to help them fit into an industry and also readjusting to the Indian culture. You follow? So these are going to be very important things.
Oh my God. I must say that I heard about you so many times that you do not hold back when you have to say the truth and you're very honest. And I just witnessed it. You really do not hold back. Thank you very much for such a candid conversation and being so authentic. And thank you very much, Dr. Gopal, for letting me interview you. And this was Dr. Gopal Vaidyanathan with us today. What do you think about this podcast? Please mention in the comments below. And everything that we spoke about, if you implement in your lives, no matter if it is pharma or no matter if it is any other company as well, this will certainly make you successful and have value for your life.
Thank you very much, Guneet, for having me over. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gopal.